Namaste. Welcome to our continuing series, Evenings with Sraddhalu. And today we have a very, very interesting series. Namaste. Your friend, Dr. Sanjay Bhatnagar, spent 1.5 hours with me on the phone the other day, telling me of all the problems in India with diabetes 1.
Yes.
And so today you're going to speak about the Dabur Research Center and their experiments in healing.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
When did you go there?
I went there a few months ago, and I was invited to see their facilities and also to address their scientists. And the context was that as a premier research lab, they had been hired by an independent group to validate their capacity for healing, biofield energy healing. That's the reference used today to describe that. And just to give a background, the lab itself, it's called Dabur Research Foundation. It's owned by the Dabur company, which is very famous in India for all their Ayurvedic products. They have more than 500 Ayurvedic products. But this is a separate unit which handles only the research aspect and the pharmaceutical validation of new product and development of new products and experimenting and testing, etc. So they have some of the highest recognitions from all over the world for US FDA approvals and all the international standards which they meet. So any test that they do, you can quote them in any research paper anywhere in the world. So that's the level of expertise that they have and the acceptance that they have. And they are doing that normally for pharmaceutical products. They shared with me how they had actually developed a treatment for cancer. And it was extremely effective. They became the leader in the world for that treatment, and that was, of course, it was a spin-off company until it was bought over by a German company which wanted to have a monopoly over all cancer treatment, so that got separated. But this is just to tell you the level of expertise that they have. So here they were approached by a US-based group which had been training people for healing, energy-based healing, and the term nowadays used is biofield energy healing. Biofield to distinguish between all the other kinds of terms being used which are non-scientific or controversial because of the vocabulary they use.
But years ago we had biofeedback.
Biofeedback. This is biofield.
This is biofield.
Yes, it's the field of energy around the human body. And so they were approached by this group and they said, okay, you're willing to pay us, we'll do the test, but we'll apply the strongest rigor of any scientific validation that we follow. Those people said, yes, we just want to see what happens. And they had only one condition, that they wanted only scientists who were willing participants, who would accept this as an approach, to be present. That's the only requirement. So the company went through, they have about 500, I think 90 scientists who are of the top level or from all over India. They went through and they selected about 30 of them who were finally involved in this experimentation. And the group that sponsored it, they had about 100 people, 100 healers from all over the world that they had trained. So those people came over a span of 2 years. They would come in groups or individually. And they were made to go through a series of experiments broadly under 8 categories, which included things like cellular aging, neuronal development, then heart condition, kidney conditions, diabetes, all kinds of typical problems which people have and serious ones. And the group would come and they would do their healing, and the objective of the experiment was to see what was the difference. And so there were 3 kinds of experiments. The third is not yet complete, but the first is at a cellular level, in vitro. So they have cell cultures, and there's a controlled cell culture, and then there is a treated cell culture, and you see the difference that it makes. And the other was with lab rats. The third level would be with human beings. That's still an ongoing experimentation. But with the cell culture and lab rats is where we have the results. The first set of results that they got, they went through what is called double blind. That means even the scientists do not know which sample has been treated, which has not. And then they repeat. They repeat with the same healer multiple times, and then they repeat across multiple healers. So the result is an average. You will have better results and worse results, but the average is what you count. And so the first few results that they got were so astounding that the scientists involved in the experiment couldn't believe it. So they went to the chief scientist, showed the result. The chief scientist said, this is too much, we can't believe it. Let's redo the whole thing. So they redid the whole thing with validating verification of their protocols, making sure there were no leaks, no mixtures. Because the result was so dramatic, it was not only comparable to normal drugs, but even better in some ways. And so that was too surprising, too shocking. Well, they went through the whole process all over again, similar results. And then bit by bit, they got into the whole thing in greater detail. So I just want to share with you, because I have a presentation here from some of their results, just to give you an idea of the kind of results they have. So one category of experiments was to manage immunity. So immune wellness, immune boosting effects, and they had 3 biophysical markers: cytokines, phagocytosis, and NK cell activity. I'm not sure what these mean, but it doesn't matter. There are 3 different markers for the cellular functioning and to measure the immunity of the cells. And so they have the control results, and maybe we'll post the video on the video screen, but you can see here the control results are the black markers. Now, in just one of the parameters, cytokines, the energy healing, biofield energy healing therapy had the result of 62% boost in immunity. Now, this is something dramatic. It means if somebody has very low immunity, without any physical medication, just with the transmission of energy, you can boost the immunity 62%. And this is an average, remember. Their observation was that some of the healers were much better and some were quite poor comparatively to the better ones. And the pattern generally was that those who had been at it 10 or 15 years were better, and those who had just started were not so effective.
How did they select them?
The healers were provided by the group which had funded the test. And so in the second parameter, 50% boost, third parameter also 50% boost. And that's dramatic. If you just look at the question of somebody who's sitting in a hospital with a very poor immunity, with no medication at all, somebody comes, stands there, transfers energy, and the immunity boosts up immediately. It's not a question of over days. If you took medication, then over a few weeks you might improve your immunity. If you took very strong medication, within days you might improve. But here, within minutes, your immunity shoots up. So the second set of experiments has to do with neuronal cells. And they're looking for oxidative damage, the cell death, which normally takes place as a result of normal internal oxidated processes. And through the CAM therapy, 53% boost in the cellular health and the reduction of the oxidation. Anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving effects, similarly. Against the control, they give an inflammatory shock by adding chemicals and other means. And because of the CAM therapy, the shock of inflammation drops 55%. So you have, let's say you have in your body inflammation or pain anywhere, in joints, in any part of the body, and it gets triggered, let's say by the weather or by some food you eat or by some psychological stresses. If you work upon yourself directly by application of energy, you're able to bring down the pain or the inflammation by 55%. Again, it's a question of minutes, not days, not weeks. So this is, we'll come to the discussion around it, but I just want to give you a few examples. a general stamina, libido boost, 72% stamina increase, bone health promoting effects, calcium boost of 65% just by energy based healing, and ATP levels, which is again relating to bone health, 80% boost. Now, 80%, we'll round it off with the better ones, better healers, you're approaching 100% boost in your calcium health. Consider how much trouble we have, let's say, with aging, when there's loss of calcium, there's bone depletion, weakening of bones, and the whole thing could be done by an energy intervention without any medicine or chemicals taken in. 80% increase.
So all of these knee replacements and
Exactly. In principle, so much of our health could be cured by such means. So, looking at now vital organ functions, cardiac functions, liver functions, lung functions, and so cardiac health, they had, let's say, a certain level of illnesses. I don't go into details of what it is that they are measuring, H9C2 oxidative stress, and the whole thing is brought down 67%. Or liver health, drop off the problem by 75%. I'm throwing these numbers now rapidly because that's the level of result you're getting. And it's not that, okay, it was very effective with cardiac, but not with liver. It's across the board for every parameter. Then they got into stem cells, activation of stem cells. 55% increase in activation of stem cell. Now, this is astounding because the implications of this. Remember, stem cells are the cells in the body which are able to multiply to become any cell. Often they are rooted in the bone marrow. There are some stem cells which are also in the brain, and there are some other parts where stem cells stay up to very old age. At any point, the stem cells can start multiplying and become muscle, nerve, tissue, bone, skin, specialized skin, retina, anything. They are the cells which allow your body to regenerate completely. Stem cell activity is being boosted 55% just by this energy boost. What does that mean? It means literally if you could guide those stem cells, direct them to particular outcomes, you would be able to regenerate any part of the body in principle. Of course, it doesn't happen like that, but in principle, if you can boost your stem cell activity, you can get them to regenerate any part of the body. In fact, this is what is being done increasingly in a whole new line of experimentation, where they take stem cells from the body, make them multiply, and then trigger them to become something specialized, let's say to become liver cells. And so you have a damaged liver, they create liver cells out of the stem cells, and then using what is called 3D printing, they pile them up in layers in the shape of a liver and then place it in the body, and quickly it forms to become as if a new liver made of your own cells. Now, this is the approach currently being developed, but it implies that in principle within the body the same process could take place. Or within the teeth, if you could trigger the stem cells, you could regenerate teeth inside out rather than having to put things from outside in. The implications is what I'm first highlighting, and then we'll discuss what else one could do. So anti-aging and skin repairing effects. Now this is a whole class of effects where they trigger cell death on one side, and then they put the energy healing to boost the protection, 36% improvement. And then the cells, the DNA inside the cells, with age they lose their endings, which are called telomeres. And those start dropping bit by bit. And often, simply by measuring the telomere length, you can say how old the cell is or how old the person is, because it's something so standardized as a measure. But recently there have been a lot of researchers which show that telomere length can actually grow by practices such as meditation, among other things. But here in this case, the healing energy, telomerase activity shot up 22%, telomere length increased. So you actually reverse aging. Skin rejuvenation, hair growth, again there are markers. So ECM markers shot up 90% on the elastin, 60% on collagen, 50% on hyaluronic acid. Overall, hair growth shot up 80% just by energy healing. So if you think you're losing hair, of course you can use all kinds of products, external application, internal intake, but you could also operate on the whole situation by an act of energy infusion. And the point I want to come to, let me just go through this list. What I want to come to is the energy need not be from someone outside you. It can be your own energy equally, or it can be invocation of the divine energy. But you will get even more dramatic results perhaps. So 80% increase in the hair growth triggers and markers. Vitamin D3, that's another dramatic one. D3 is the vitamin which is most normally created by our exposure to sunlight. And generally they say the body does not synthesize it. And interestingly, India having much higher sunlight because being in the tropics, most Indians seem to have a D3 deficiency. And the explanation for this is not obvious. It could be people simply avoid the sunlight, but I'm not sure if that's it. It could be that. But what the scientists also suggested was it could be that it's not enough that you have sunlight, it's the body's ability to absorb D3. The cells can create them, but can the body absorb and retain? And maybe something there is not functioning. So what they did was they applied the energy healing on D3 levels, vitamin D receptors, and so we have energy ATP production in the bone shooting up 250%, energy ATP production in muscle shooting up 300%, anti-inflammatory responses going down, or depending on how you would say it, going up or down, 273% for one marker and 200% for another marker. Numbers are so astounding. In one particular case, they told me, I don't see it here, they said in one of the cases, the vitamin D3 level shot up 400% after whatever intervention was done. So then they're speaking of mindfulness practices and meditation on the effect on stress, anxiety, cancer, etc. And so that brings us to human clinical trials through mindfulness practices. And there again, they have a whole set of parameters which they're measuring: liver health, brain health, kidney health, bone health, etc. They had a wellness panel of 24 biomarkers which are listed, and cardiovascular, metabolic, and other panels. All of this, in summary, immunity shot up 62%, mental cognition, clarity of thought and intellectual awareness, 53% increase against neuronal damage, pain and inflammation, 55% decrease, stamina and sexual health, 72% increase, bone health, 65% increase in calcium content, 80% increase in ATP levels. This is human level, remember. Stem cells, 55%, organ wellness, 67%, anti-aging, 36%.
Now, how is it human levels when they
And
test
D3, vitamin D3 in the human, 450% increase. Amazing.
But how is it when they haven't been testing humans yet? And
so this was the human trials, the last part which I read out. They have a larger trial which has some 800 humans, which is still ongoing. But the conclusion from this, here's a situation where somebody from outside comes, puts an energy boost on cells in a petri dish, and the cells begin to change. They put an energy boost on rats in a cage, and the rats begin to improve. They put an energy boost on a human being, and you have a change in health. And the biomarkers are very specific. It's not as if they're just dumping energy and everything shoots up. They were told specifically, we are looking to measure such and such a marker. Now, this is where I'm coming to the two things which for me were shocking. Shocking in the sense pleasantly, but which were a new learning experience. So for us, we have grown up with this kind of thing. We know that an energy intervention and of course a spiritual intervention can change things even with miraculous results. No big deal. So the two things which were surprising for me. First was, the healer would be told, we are going to measure this, whatever that thing was, A9, C2, whatever. We want to measure this increase. And the healer says, what is that? Like me. I say, what is that? And so the scientist is going to explain what it does in the cellular function. Here is a particular, let's say, hormone or protein or amino acid which regulates such and such function and does this and does that. So the healer understands this and says, okay, that's fine. And then he concentrates, puts that intention into the energy which he puts, and just that marker goes up. Or in another case, the same marker had to be brought down. The healer is told we want it to come down. He puts his energy and the marker comes down. How do you explain this? The healer has no specific knowledge of the cellular working. He puts an intention in the energy, and the intention has only a label of one of these markers. Let's say ATP marker. What does ATP mean? I don't know. But I put an intention for it to go up. The energy does that. The energy is supposed to be his biological energy that gets into the cellular working. Even if it's rats or human being, it gets into the cells. And here inside the cells, when the energy enters, just as a picture, the cell is something so complex. It's as complex as an entire city. You have so many functions. You have functions for energy generation. You have functions for distributing basic resources and vitamins. You have functions for garbage cleaning, which go and take the waste product from different parts, accumulate them, and then throw them out from the cell walls. And all of this is being coordinated, 10,000 different functions at any given moment. And here the energy enters, and it finds a way to boost this particular marker by modifying the functions which make for this marker to increase. The only explanation is that the energy entering the cells has an intelligence or access to an intelligence which is far greater than our own. Even scientists do not know what makes for that marker to go up. And getting inside the cell to trigger the very things needed to make that marker go up. How do you do that? So this is one of the problems of scientists. How do you explain how this works? They can't. And the only explanation we have, of course, is when we come to Sri Aurobindo's explanation that consciousness, of course, is everywhere. It is not only in matter, but it is emerging out of matter in the evolutionary process, but it went into matter by an involutionary process. And that consciousness is, Sri Aurobindo uses the word somnambulistic. It's sleepwalking, basically. So it's basically stuck in a mechanical, repetitive, instinctive drive, doing its thing by habit, not self-aware, not able to exercise a separate will, but just driven by the habitual impulse and the energy that the consciousness shapes to make for that pattern. But you will find in the Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo goes to the very core of matter itself after describing the involution, and then he goes into the matter, into the atom itself, and then he shows you how within that somnambulism of the consciousness or energy in the atom, you have the aspect of Sat and the Chit and the Ananda. But the nature of the Ananda is completely shut into its own swoon of, we'll use the word trance. It is in delight in itself, in its separateness, and it's shut in as if. But it has the full Satchidananda bound inside the full knowledge, the full power, and the full delight is as if locked in.
In each cell.
In each atom. In each subatomic particle. And therefore obviously implied even in the constructions that they make of cells or everything else. And so the consciousness entering is able to tap into the inherent intelligence, not just at an atomic level, in the cellular level in this case, tapping into the inherent intelligence which sustains the cellular working, which is somnambulistic, not self-aware in that sense, but it is intelligence, and awakes in the intelligence the specific knowledge and impulse to work out that result. So if you understand it in this way, it's so obvious. The intention put by the healer is carried in the energy which he has put, and maybe his energy is very limited, but it's enough to get into the cell's energy and imprint that intention to awaken the knowledge and direct it. Now, if a healer can do it from outside you, you can do it from within you, in principle, and with these kinds of dramatic results. So first aspect was the precision of the engagement in the healing, that you could tap a specific marker, boost it, reduce it, or even do a bunch of markers. The second surprising thing for me was the rapidity of the result. And so the scientists shared how, when they were working with the neuronal cells and they wanted the neurons to grow connections. So there are two things. One is neurons can multiply. That makes for more brain cells or nerve cells, let's say. But the real intelligence and the knowledge storage is not in the number of cells, but in their interconnections. That the cells communicate with each other and have more connections to communicate. That's the key. So they wanted to increase the number of connections between the cells. And they said, the way it was done, the protocol was that the energy healing was done not directly on the cell, but on the liquid which is used as nutrition for the cells. So there would be two boxes, one without the energy, one with the energy boost. Then they would take the cell, two samples of the cells, put one in each, and then observe on a microscope. The moment the cells were put in the energized liquid solution, they were looking through the microscope, measuring the growth of neurons. They saw within 2 minutes the connections beginning to grow rapidly, reaching out from one cell to another, joining, forming connections within 2 minutes. And then they were so surprised that it was so quick, because normally the chemicals used to trigger growth, they take much longer. So they took it out, and seeing in the microscope, it stopped growth. They put it right back in, and again the growth starts. You see the implications. The content of your body's energy is right now affecting the growth of everything in your cellular working, and of course even your intelligence. If your energy is so oriented as to inhibit the growth, that's the result you have. You reshape the energy, reorient it, you can trigger right now, boost the growth of neuronal connections, effectively boosting your IQ, intelligence, or other faculties of your biological brain functions within a few minutes. What an astounding implication this has. It means right now, if you begin to change your state of energy and intention, you can boost your intelligence, boost your muscle energy, muscle efficiency, boost your bone growth, boost the level of vitamin D3, change anything. And the result can be as rapid as a few days, measurably. And the level which is not 5% or 10%, but 50, 70 or 450%. The implication is that your problems or your condition or your inability is the direct reflection of your state of energy and consciousness. Not only the way your energy feels itself to be or believes itself capable of, and your mind's intention and awareness that is constantly telling yourself, I can't do, I am not capable, oh, I forget, I am losing my memory. And you're affirming in your biological energy processes, I am losing, I am losing, I am losing, which is the inverse, the reverse of the positive healing. What does the healer do? He comes and says, you're getting better, and puts that intention with the energy which goes into the cells and triggers that change. As long as his energy is stronger than yours, it helps you. But if your energy pushes back and says, no, but I don't want to get better, I can't get better, who are you to say I can? Well, it'll push back. And so this is one of the problems in these kinds of experiments, which was the reason why the condition was that only scientists who accepted and believed would have to be present. If there is a strong presence which is negative, or which refuses that this is possible, then you are, or the scientist is bringing an influence of negative energy, which can neutralize or reduce the effectivity of the healer. The scientists present said often we could make out which was the genuine, which was the healed sample and which was not, because there was a qualitative difference of energy in handling. Although they didn't have any reference externally, it was double blind, but they could often feel. So now I come to one more example of the experiment, which to me is not surprising, but to the scientists was the most shocking. They said at one point they were inviting a healer who was at that point based in the US, and the healer said, "I'm sorry, I had planned to come, but I have something urgent, I cannot come, but don't worry, I'll do the healing through Skype." And the scientist said, "What?" So to them it was unbelievable. Strong reaction, but still. They were told, and they set up the experiment. So they had 2 laptops. One was on a Skype call with the healer sitting in the US. The other was connected to a webcam pointing to something neutral, that was the control. And so they have 2 samples sitting in front of a laptop screen. And on the laptop screen appears the healer who can see the sample, and then he does his healing. Of course, the results were as effective as if the person was in the room. So that was astounding for them, and they couldn't understand why. So this was one of the discussions I had with them of how this works. But what was interesting was their observation. When the person started healing, they could feel a difference, a shift of energy in the room. That's interesting. And what this implies again, the goodwill people have for you sends a healing energy. Your grandma cares for you. She may be elsewhere in a different city, but she prays for you every day. And she may tell you, "Oh, my grandchild, don't worry, I pray for you every day." And the child says, "Oh, yeah, sure, grandma, thanks." No meaning, no understanding of what it means. And the grandma doing it has the same value as this energy healing. We are not conscious of how much goodwill we receive from those who have goodwill for us or who pray, or how much our own good intention or prayer can help others. And of course, one of the implications of the experiment is the intention you put is very important. I remember Panditji's sister, Mitraka, she would often, when I was traveling, she would say, "I'm praying for you every day," whenever I would phone. And then later I saw also she would write in her notebook. She would say, "I'm writing a prayer for you to the mother." And later I read some of the things she wrote. She would say, "Mother, mother, mother, please help Sraddhalu, please protect him, give him strength, give him courage, give him intelligence." And she would write something every day. And the effect of that, of course, was there. And it would be enormous, whether I'm conscious or not. The effect would be there. And often people feel it when now grandma passed away, suddenly I feel I don't have the same kind of support. And you think, oh, it's just because of loss of emotional contact, but it's more than that. So there are many such implications if we start thinking of what this means. Distance does not matter. And energy sent with goodwill does not matter what the distance is. Of course, the healer needed the webcam, the connection through the screen in order to be able to focus his intention on the person. But grandma didn't need that because grandma can feel you as a part of her, because the emotional connection is already there. For the healer, what sample are you talking about? There's no emotional connection. So you need a visual point to focus attention. Of course, it means also ill will can have equally negative effects. But on the other hand, when goodwill meets ill will, goodwill is always stronger and can overwhelm ill will. So if we have built around ourselves in our consciousness a strong, optimistic, positive energy of goodwill, somebody's ill will coming will simply bounce off. It does not get a hook to penetrate. But if you have ill will for people, somebody else's ill will for you catches that point of resonance and gets into you through that, through the ill will you have, and can evoke the negative reaction. But if you are full of goodwill, even against your own enemy, whoever you may consider your enemy, have only goodwill, have only positive and loving thoughts. You may still have to act if it is a question of a combat or a conflict. You may still have to act, but with goodwill and love in whatever form it may be. If you have that, his ill will to you cannot get a hook. But if you engage with ill will, his ill will and your ill will combine, and they trigger each other, and it makes for all kinds of negative consequences. So it was an advice that the mother gave to Panditji. When he was going through a lot of difficulty, there were people in the ashram who were harassing him and doing all kinds of nonsense. But he was a very sensitive person, so he felt hurt. And mother said to him that his problem was, she said, you think everybody is like you. And it was her way of saying that, well, people are not always good. But at one point when he was going through difficulty, she said to him, do you know which is the best way to disarm your enemy? She said, love him. Without any condition, love him. And Panditji said it was difficult. He was not always able to do, but that was the guideline that he followed thereafter. And that's the most powerful force. Love, and ideally the purest form of love is the love for the Divine Mother. And if you can fill yourself with that, and then turn that love to the Divine Mother's presence in all beings, in all people, in all circumstances, in all situations, that is your most powerful protection. But it is also for you the most powerful healing action. So to take the logic of this whole thing to its conclusion, if a human healer can intervene with such dramatic results, the divine healer can intervene with far greater results. And when you approach a healer, when you say, I want to be healed, you have opened yourself effectively, which allows for the connection to form and for the action from them to affect you. If you say no, then the healer can try, but maybe something gets in, something doesn't, much of it is bounced off or lost. But when you approach, that's why for them it's very important that you approach, not they offer. When you approach, you have opened yourself. But this principle is a spiritual principle when you open yourself to the divine. And in the part that can open to the divine, and to the exclusivity that you can bring in the openness to the divine, immediately the divine action is present. Immediately there is a result, and at least as dramatic as the human healing that we have seen. At least as dramatic, often more. You may or may not be conscious. If your neurons have grown in connections, you may not be conscious because you don't feel them, but it is measurable.
As to your point, I remember Mother once telling a disciple, I'm sending you the healing force, and each time you're rejecting it.
Yes.
Yes. And she did it again and again to heal that person, and it closed.
Yes. And sometimes Mother would say to somebody, because often it would be someone is very sick in the hospital bed, and a disciple who's a friend or relative will inform the mother, and it has happened that the mother would say to the person that I will use you as an intermediary for the help, for the force to be sent, because the person is not able to receive or is rejecting. There's some resistance. But the person is open to the relative. So the mother's force would go use that entry point.
And the mother said, I can transmit a state of consciousness more easily through a flower than through a man.
Yes. The context for that is very interesting. You see, often Mother could not meet 1,000 people in a day. So often people would have to send their messages or complaints or questions through a few people who were effectively her secretaries. And so a secretary would come with 10 or 20 different messages, and mother would quickly go through them. Whereas if the person came, then each person would need at least 5 or 10 minutes, and that would become too much. So when mother would send a reply, the reply was not always yes or no. Even if she says yes, the reply is not in the yes or the no. The reply is the energy and the inspiration which is given for the execution. So when the person is in front of her and he asks, Mother, can I do this? Or should I do it this way or that way? She will say, yes, this way. And with it, she gives this burst of inspiration which contains knowledge, strength, power, resilience, courage, equality, all the things necessary in the poise of consciousness for the thing to be done effectively. Now that she could send, when she said yes, through the intermediary who is now the link point, so to say, because the person is waiting downstairs, the secretary comes back and says, Mother said yes. Now can that energy which she has put in her yes be transmitted into the yes? And yes, some of them were very effective instruments, so it worked perfectly well. And then there were those who were not so. And there were those who would actually come, Mother had said no, they would come down and say, Mother has said yes. And it's on record, many of them would do that. And that's the reason why it became a problem. And Panditji once complained to the mother. He said, people have fear. And mother made a gesture saying, what can I do? When mother was pouring love, there were people who were afraid that it would be reported to the mother, or that one of the secretaries would give a negative report or would come back with a message which was negative or positive and not what they wanted. And there was this fear. And so you see, on a human level, this is always a problem. Sometimes what mother would do, she would say, this was a case of a person who said, Mother, I want to learn occultism. So mother took a blessing packet, she put in concentration of energy and said, give him this. And said, first condition, you must have no fear. So the blessing packet was given, and he was told by the mother had sent a message that she was giving what was needed for him. Of course, to translate that, to receive that, what she gave is not always easy, because the human mind starts questioning and trying to, it cuts through. But that was one way, and the most effective way was the flower. Even when a person is in front of the mother, and mother would give an energy or a help or transmit a state of consciousness, the person is busy trying to communicate with mother. Mother, I want this, I want that. Mother, are you smiling? Are you not smiling? Why are you not smiling? All those things are going on. And in his own consciousness, he's trying to put up this perfect angelic front so that mother will not see the stuff that's inside him. And all of this creates a very strange condition. And instead, if the person is not so receptive, mother would give the flower, and the flower is received, and the person is holding the flower, and it stays with him, stays in his room at a time when he's relaxed, and it continues to transmit the state, and the result is there. At the time when he is most open and relaxed, which he may not be when he goes to meet the mother. And so the vehicle for transmission, she found the flower to be the most effective. Coming back to the theme of the energy healing. If you can ask for a very specific outcome from a healer, you can equally ask from the divine. Why not? Isn't it?
Yes.
If you can ask for a particular intervention in you, you can equally ask for an intervention in another. If you can ask for an intervention of energy which can change cellular working, you can also ask for an intervention which will change human working. Isn't it? So here we have a conflict. Let's say in our group, we sit down, we're going to sort it out. We could approach the whole thing with our capacity and perhaps exaggerate the conflict, or we could invoke Mother's help and ask her to show us the way to a resolution, and you will get the help. But you have to ask, you have to call. And that requirement I'm again explaining in the context of the healer, saying You have to ask, which is the condition for you to be open and receptive. But the same thing, you have to ask. The divine help is there, Mother said. But it becomes effective when you pray or when you ask. Why? Because you're opening yourself at that point. Otherwise, you're closed. You're busy thinking, I have to fix it, I will do it, and relying on yourself. The help is there, it kind of stays in the periphery, but cannot come in. So in that experience, in the visit to the Dabur Research Foundation, there was one more thing which I thought worth sharing. Going through the labs, seeing all their facilities, I was very impressed. And somehow I was seeing how they develop new products. And what they have done is quite amazing. Literally using only herbs, no chemical of any kind, just herbal extracts. They've been able to produce a whole range of all kinds of medicines, and even like a mouth spray which is antibacterial. So you spray and it eliminates bad breath, but there is nothing except herbal extract. And I looked at the liquid, it was completely transparent. I said, how do you homogenize it? See, that's a big problem today. If you buy milk in a carton, to prevent milk to develop cream and create separation, which people will open and say, is this spoiled? So to prevent it not looking bad, they introduce a homogenizer in the milk, which is sold all over the world. That homogenizer is a known carcinogenic. Can you believe it? You buy milk carton and they've put a cancer-causing homogenizer to make it look pretty for you. So homogenizers are a problem generally. Any food, they put homogenizer. Any liquid, they put homogenizers. I said, what have you used as homogenizer? They said, nothing. The way we process the plant extract, they take it through certain machines which break it down into tiny molecules. You don't need to homogenize. So it's completely pure. And so they've developed a whole spectrum of 60 products of this kind for various kinds of treatment. So I was amazed at what they were doing and the kind of innovation. I said, you have some of the best people doing some of the most wonderful work. Of course, it has to be translated into a product in the market, that's different. And then I said, you have all these creams, you have all these products for anti-aging, skin and all. And of course, the experiments with aging. I said, how do you test the cellular aging or the aging of rats? Because what they do, they can't wait many weeks for the experiment to be completed. So they take the rats or the cell sample, they trigger an aging process, accelerate the aging. And then they have the energy healing, biofield healing to try to reverse the aging. I said, how do you accelerate aging? What do you use? And I was expecting some poisons or chemicals. And of course, it is a poison, it is a chemical, but not what I expected. And so they laughed. They said, the most effective aging agent used all over labs as a standard, all over the labs, all over the world, is concentrated sugar water. Think about it. How often in a day are you eating sugar, drinking sugar, and in so many products packaged that you buy, look at the quantity of sugar. Just because you don't taste its sweetness doesn't mean it's there. It can be up to 30-40% in certain sweets. And you may not feel the sugar. You say, this is not very sweet, it's nice. No, it's not the taste, because there are ways to suppress the sweetness of the sugar. It's the content of sugar and the concentrated content at the level of cells of your body. And of course, in the whole working of your body, it accelerates aging tremendously. And it's the most effective poison for accelerated aging. So one of the things which happened from that visit was I came back and I said, no more sugar. Of course, I still, once in a while, you don't have to make a fetish of it, but you cut it out as drastically as possible so that you're free to take when you want to occasionally, but you don't allow it to become a staple. And it has also a similar result when you take those packaged sugary drinks of any kind. They have very high levels of sugar. Even if they say 0 calorie, it means nothing. Because what they have put as a replacement for the sweetener is still as damaging. Fructose is extremely damaging. And all of these are also related to the diabetes, which you mentioned earlier. Maybe we can discuss that another time. So this is broadly what I wanted to share from this experience.
Thank you so much.